Do you see a parallel between what Swatch just read and Kaepernick at all? Knees.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, I'm just thinking about it now. I think that's really interesting because when I go to a lot of protests, they take a knee, and I'm always wondering what is the context of this, especially lately, because that's how George Floyd died. And so it's really interesting to see like white people taking a knee, because it's like, well, a white person was like taking a knee on George Floyd, and that's how he died. And so I think taking a knee is interesting in that Kaepernick is doing it as a form of like disavowing, I guess, America. But then here it's like seen as a tool of like subjugation. What do you think about it?
Well, I read a post about, I'm not sure what I think so far, but I read a post that stated that I will never follow my knees for, to protest the NFL. But when you're on your knees, you can't really do anything.
You can't move.
I mean, there's this.
Hey, baby, Ash, all this stuff has been recorded, right?
Yeah, so the first one was recorded, and then the second one, I can't save that recording until this first one is converted, but it's all in my Zoom account. So once you set it to record, you can just convert it later on.
Okay, when they're done, can you retransfer me those, please?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Sorry to interrupt you, guy. I can't record. I thought I was recording, but I guess I'm not. So.
Oh, I can give you those privileges or whatever. I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place.
Yeah, but yeah, can you continue recording and I'll just be backup recording?
Yeah, sure.
But and I think it just goes to show the true, how would I say that? Positionality of Black people in America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like this idea that, you guys, I'm in a meeting. Can you not be so loud?
Yeah. Tell Z to hold it down for me, please. Z.
Swa said, hold it down.
Please.
You know how to manipulate kids to get one to feel empowered. Yeah, it's so interesting because like when you're on your knees, you can't move. Like but you can flail, and you can like unintentionally but like you can never leave your position. So I think that is really, really interesting.
You also can't harm, you can't harm. So I don't want to just interrupt you guys. Was there anything more?
I'm good.
I just hopped in the middle. I want to further bring light to the reality of Christianity being like totally destructive and violent, and we can find that on page 53. And I will read from what should I start off? Okay. In 1378, the Pope sent inquisitors into Waldensian valleys of northern Italy. Inquisitor Borelli had 150 citizens, including women and children, burned alive in Grenoble. In the same region, 1,400 citizens were chased from their homes in the dead of night by inquisitors on Christmas Eve. The following morning, strewn across the snow-packed hills, more than 50 children were found frozen to death in their mothers' arms. Maybe that's why it's always so cold. Christmas Eve. Ghosts of dead children, spirits looming about. Maybe that's why. I just, just, you can't, I can't, the only way I can contextualize this to modern society is that, I don't know, we still have people like, praising God and then going over a different country, dropping drone bombs over there, drone strikes over there under the name of God, liberty just for all. So is I just don't know how beneficial this system, or at least this particular aspect of the system being religion, Christianity, has been to the benefit of humanity. I don't know if we're I don't know how many I don't know how many of us are comfortable with, the massive violence and death and destruction going around, but I personally don't think that's how humanity should be behaving.
I mean, it is hard to separate like the historicity of Christianity without talking about the murder, the torture, the sacrificing. But myself, I do identify with having a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to
I would just
put into words.
Yeah, I would ask, what does that mean in like the context of white supremacy? Like, what does that mean to have a relationship with this figure? And how is that like constructive to hopefully the collective journey of like ending white supremacy, eliminating white supremacy. That's
For me, it goes back to self-empowerment. As it goes, Jesus Christ was, they pinned his hands and feet to a cross on the Calvary, and he left the Holy Spirit. And it sounds all woo-woo, but ultimately, the Holy Spirit lives within those who believe, those who identify as Christians. And I feel like once we forget that, and begin to worship idols, for example, and we have an agenda, that's when the violence and the murdering starts. Actually, I haven't put much thought to that, so I'm going to go back, and maybe next Zoom call I can have a more thought out answer for you.
Yeah, I would love that. Well, I think everyone should really like think about like what is their relationship to every religion, not just Christianity.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think it's excellent part of the book, of the Equiano narrative, where I didn't highlight this part for some reason, but I just remember it. Highlight it right now. So this is context. This is when Equiano is trying to convert or colonize a Native American young boy. And it reads, the Mosquito youth ultimately rejects Equiano's advances with the support of his clansmen who tease him and inquire if the Black missionary has converted him to Christianity. The youth see through Equiano, through the hypocrisy and irony of the moment. How comes it, inquires the youth, that all white men on board who can read and write and observe the sun know all things, yet swear, lie, and get drunk, only accepting yourself? His question insufficiently answered, the youth stays to himself for the duration of his journey back to his homeland, and Equiano never sees him or speaks of him again in the narrative following his return. So now that I'm reading it for the second time, a new thought enters my mind. This is just what like I feel like this is what happens when people question the hypocrisy of whatever rhetoric they're trying to spread. If they can't, if there's nothing they can do about it, if there's no way to convince the person on their rhetoric, this is how they deal with it. They just don't deal with it. They just don't mention it. Never happened. I'm just gonna keep spreading the rhetoric to the people who I eventually can, do it to. And I think that's really really crazy. It's really.
I also think it's interesting that the kid was like, you have to be exceptional and actually have to be like this pious person, but
Oh
the
wow.
people who are like the ones who are the arbiters of this religion or this ideology that have converted you, they're drunk, they're violent, they're all these things, and yet you're coming as a Black missionary in this like somewhat like perfection, and it's always this idea of like, even though like, and I hear this like, it's like, I don't know how to put it into words well, but I feel like Black people always are striving to be perfect, to like fit into like a lot of these ideas of like the Protestant work ethic and all this stuff, and yet like they never like expect that of white people, and if anything they're harsher on their own kind when they don't like fulfill that idea. So I think it's really interesting that the kid called him out and was like, why are you like this perfect specimen of Christianity, and yet the people who are like also are like drunk here and doing this. And I think that's it's very much how our society is. I think a lot of people who a lot of I mean I read a study about that, about how Black people view Christianity versus white people, and like what they take from the story of Jesus and all these things. And a lot of times Black people almost take it as a sort of humbling story, and a story about like almost like having to take from others because I can't explain it, but like in turn like Black people take it as a humbling story that is more about I don't know, I'm not explaining it well, but white people see it more of a story of like that fits into their narrative of power and specialness. And Black people see it more as like something that brings you back down. It like that makes you feel like you are not special, you are among all of us, if that makes sense. And so I think that's really interesting because he's actually like interpreting Christianity in that way, and the white people are interpreting it in a way of like pillaging in a sense, or giving them an excuse to pillage. So
it exactly. And I hate that I just had something slip my mind, but I think it's also very interesting that Equiano's narrative was only taken serious by like the British status quo because he had assimilated to the high stature of whiteness, Anglo-Saxon Europeans stature or whatever, because people were talking about this since slavery, since it had started, but it was always dismissed because religion or the religion that was used during this period of time, like after like before anything else, it gave white people like this idea that they were entering like this like uncivilized land, and it's their duty to dominate and enlighten these people. And I think that's a lot of that shows through like slavery and how it was like, you know, and how it manifested.
It brings up this idea for me is white versus black. How do you see yourself in the story of Jesus Christ and the salvation? Are you the protagonist? Are you the one that's the hero? Jesus Christ being, what is the word that I'm looking for? When you're on a cross, crucified? Are you the one being crucified? Are you doing that act for humankind? Or are you identifying with the black epistemology, if I can use that word, if that fits here? Are you the one who is receiving that salvation? So it brings up what Ash says around humility, how black people see that as a grounding experience, whereas white see it as an invitation to pillage.
Evan, I think your mic is acting up a little bit. I think you're,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what the study was saying, that Black people see themselves as the people who betrayed Jesus, so then they feel guilt and are looking for salvation through Christianity. And white people see themselves as Jesus, or the person that was like sacrificed as like this ultimate victim.
Wow.
And they like have this victim mentality that persists through generations.
And that is profound. I have never had that like I've never had that correlation, nor have I seen that correlation. Like to me, like, you know, I don't practice like affirmation religion. So I had just imagined that like it makes more sense for like the black people who practice Christianity to see themselves as Jesus Christ, because he was persecuted, and he was persecuted because he was different. So I guess that's why I like have accepted, you know, black people feel like Jesus makes sense. This is why, you know, under what since my experience, I have to validate in whatever way I can, and that's how I would validate people practicing Islamic religion. But yeah, that's crazy. That's bizarre that they see themselves as like potentially the people who like crucified God and tortured God and brutalized God, when literally in like actual reality they've been the ones been crucified on an almost day-to-day basis. So it's just really like it's just really unfortunate that this is the reality, and this is the kind of warped, confused thinking and like that that white supremacy racism can't produce. And yeah, I want to beat around the bush. I cannot beat around the bush.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, it makes sense when you think about the conditioning, right? If white people have told you like your existence is like sin personified, then you see that as like your salvation, or you're being able to become like, you know, worthy in a sense. And I think you hear it a lot, because I think a lot of Black people are more likely to be like, you know, we're all sinners, and we have to find our salvation through Jesus Christ, versus like white people. It's very rare to hear them say that type of thing. They definitely see themselves as already being saved, as already being worthy, like, and that they don't need to be humbled, right? Like they're the ultimate victims in their minds. Like,
and I think we have to I need to personally remember that for a long time the black people's skin tone, the actual color of their skin, was attributed to like the original sin. You know, they were like, you know, like the darkies were like the demons. You know, the demons are always like, you know, black, dark figures, dark shadows. Those, whenever we see like any kind of like racial language being used to depict like black people using different demons. Our demons are usually black. So we have to remember that, you know, in early Christianity, like, and during the conditioning of black people, like they were usually like taught and conditioned to look to their own skin tone as the source of why they should be treated and subjected to this, you know, violence and, you know, under this religion, under this system. Damn. Damn. Um, I have to share this. I not highlighted, but one of America's favorite writers for some reason, even though he was an Englishman, Charles Dickens. I'm gonna share this quote with us. Hopefully, you guys can have some thoughts about it. Maybe. Let's see. All right. So this is Charles Dickens. I believe he wrote Moby Dick.
Hmm?
Mine's supposed to be curly. Yeah, that's too.
Okay.
Wait,
Okay. None said it better than the English gentleman Charles Dickens when he referred to the African savage as something highly desirable to be civilized off the face of the earth. Africans were brought to Europe and locked behind museum cages and bars. Europeans displayed their genitalia and scientists studied their harvested body parts. So, touching back to what I said earlier, how like upon contact, white people just saw like black people in Africa as just a place to be dominated and a place to be, well, genocided. Now this is genocide right here. I think what he's describing is genocide, in a sense. Yeah. And and I should just add this: even when the English accepted Africans into society, it was under a mandate of racial cleansing. You know, very genocidal language right here. Very genocidal language. So, yeah. Did anyone highlight anything about the soul, or did anyone have any like takeaways from this when they're talking about the soul?
Yeah, I did. I mean, personally, I've always felt that I've had a soul. What about y'all? So, like when things come up like this, it's like I have to almost step outside of myself in order to understand. And there's a quote on page 49 about like Europeans not able to reconcile how Africans are soul bearers. It says if we accept the conclusions of European as soul and body harvesters, then we have to wonder how Europeans might have used, commodified, and ingested the very African souls that they consistently claim did not exist. So there's like a hiding of the hands here. And the power.
I just
wait. Let Ebony finish.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you at all.
There's like a hiding of the hands, and what I mean by that is, do you have a soul today? Do you have a soul tomorrow? It's all up in the air in telling of who writes the narratives.
Yeah, and this is not what I was gonna say, but like a lot of like the debate and like in the slave era was like a bunch of like white people debating if black people even had souls, you know. So let's not forget that. And Ash, do you have anything to add, Ash?
I think it's interesting because it's like this dichotomy. On one side, it's like white people are wondering if we are like these savage beasts that don't have a soul. But on the other instance, white people take so much from our culture because they think that it's the purest type of soul, right? Like our soul music and like soul food and things like that. So it's almost like it's that type of like gaslighting that people, the dominant like group always does, where it's like in one instance it's like you're not worth anything, but in another instance it's like you're so worthy that I'm taking from you. Right? And it's like, so I think that's really interesting because I thought that line really resonated because it still happens now when you think about the idea of taking Black people's culture, and white people are the ones who are trading it, right? The ones who are profiting off of it, the ones who are the soul traders to this day, whether it be like human trafficking or whether it be like the things that especially like Black Americans produce, and the culture that they have. So I thought that was really interesting, the idea of like white people being soul harvesters on many levels, like many levels.
Yeah, and it just really echoes like the entire hypocrisy of like like where's the logic? Like where's the logic in treating a person so cruel and pretending to be so benevolent? Like it's just that it's insanity to me. It's insanity to me, and that's the only way I can describe it. So I don't go crazy thinking about it. I would but it's so much more than that though. That minimizes it. And I think it's really like interesting how like various parts of like the continent of Africa, like Sierra Leone, like Gambia, maybe that's
You
other
said it
place.
right.
Yeah, like these, they already when the Europeans had first contacted them, and they were slowly like learning their intentions. They were already calling them cannibals. Like they already had like thought like this is really suspicious. Like you want to do what now? You want to buy us? You know, that's bizarre. We don't want to do none of that.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of people like at the beginning of the slave era was like were like kidnapped, and then once like the white people grew their power, they were able to like force their way into other places in the continent and really get the slave trade going, which created really sick stuff. You know, you know, it was sick in the beginning, but what created the sick stuff on a global scale? You know, spread it everywhere. You know, where the disease like became more of a living organism that is self-sustaining through hate and violence and subjugating other people. So I think it's really awesome that like the collective like consciousness of like Africans at that time were understanding that they were being like consumed in the literal sense and the metaphorical sense of like through their labor, through like the knowledge that they were sharing with the Europeans, and of course through um, being raped, you know, being forced to be like zoos, and just living like things to be experimented on, you know, subjects of the worst sort of treatment. Oh, I want to talk about. I hope I highlighted it. And human vampirism is another like way he describes he describes slavery. Um, actually, human vampirism. It's on page 48. Equiano says the state of pleasure that Equiano describes connotes horror, abjection, in human vampirism. In this context of social death and energetic exchange, pleasure operates as an organic using an organic unit, a life-sustaining energy readily bartered and exchanged during slavery, and two, a process of imbibing spirit and soul force, which is just a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's super interesting because I
Mhm.
was reading that Afro pessimism book, and in the book they talk about how like what humanity is as we see it literally comes from the idea of like Black people not being human, and so like other groups gain their humanity by being not like by not being the slave.
Mhm.
And so I think that was like, I think that's that like that idea of vampirism is like taking the life out of Black people to sustain your own, which is like what America is, right? Like it
Right,
took
yeah.
free labor from Black people to make
Yeah.
this like huge empire.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the ultimate like vampirism.
Yeah, like took away like our life force or our humanity, you know. Yeah, interchangeable. Yeah, definitely built on blood, you know. Um. Oh. I just. I just want to. Well, I just have so much stuff highlighted that I'm just gonna continue sharing. Until we run out of time.
We have 10 minutes left. I think this is like the
The last
last
one.
part. Yeah, for
Oh
me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is like. I was gonna read it. Not only do we consume you, the captain of the British Royal Navy conveys, but we also make you consume each other. So I'm just like, that's a lot of people would call this person a cold piece of work, but I would call this very like diabolical. This is
Yeah.
diabolical and just to say it with such like I don't know, it just like I know that this person's not saying it to me like face right now, but it just seems so like it is so callous and so just
Cold and
direct.
calculating.
Yeah, it's like and the systems are in place, so he's not lying, you know.
Yeah, and it's still in place, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah,
consume
prison
each
institution,
other.
prison institution, and yeah, we consume each other through.
Yeah. What do you think, Ebony?
Well, that part I had to underline that twice. I couldn't help but to think, wow, could you imagine working in the fields with someone and then having them for dinner the next day?
Wow.
There's like this. I wonder, like after a long period of time, there's like not a rumor, but a misconception or conception once you flesh, you have a taste for human flesh. So is there a certain amount of that? But I thought of consumption not only with cannibalism here, but just what happens in a capitalistic society. What happens when a worker, works 40 hours a week, but still can't, afford all the needs that they have for their family, etc. I thought of consumption on that level, just in terms of current parallel.
Yeah. I think of that the same way too. I think about that in the context too of like we in Western society consuming like the global South too, in terms of like resources and things like that. So it's like so many layers. So when they say like, it's almost like it's set up for us to consume each other, and it's like, so I think about that a lot. Like how do we separate from that?
Yeah, like
Because it's ingrained.
wow, the mentality. Yeah, but you, wow, you just what you just said is so profound. They're still making us consume each other. I didn't realize it. They're still making us do it.
Yeah, we do it to this day.
Oh my God. I think for like the remainder of our time, we should all like just talk about our biggest takeaways from the introduction and from chapter 1.
We should talk about our what?
Our biggest takeaways
Our
from
biggest
chapter,
takeaways.
from the introduction in chapter 1.
I'll go first.
Yeah, okay.
I think, well, I actually have a lot, but I really am enjoying this book, and I'm actually really enjoying being able to like talk about it with you guys too, because it really helps process all of it. Something for me that is a big takeaway is one, like how do these things persist to this day, but also like the whole idea of Equiano and the people in his life. I really wonder like what is the white mind in terms of like, is it like so much more strategic than us? Is it like so much more inclined to power than us? Is it a philosophy? Like what causes this? Because when you talk about how like the people in Gambia and Sierra Leone, they had this idea or this feeling, this energy, right? Because like energy, like people pick up on energy, and that's a big thing, and they have that energy of like these people are cannibals, because it's not like people in Africa hadn't been trading with the Arab, with like the Spanish, or with like even the Chinese. So it's not like they hadn't had other people who look differently from them in those places. So what is it about the white philosophy or the white existence that predicates itself to like be this overseer of power? And is it a strategy? Is it like what? So that's like what I'm taking away from it and what I'm trying to understand when I'm reading it. Yeah.
I think I love that like that you're inching on that you want that knowledge and you want that understanding, because I feel like once we start reading Neely Fuller, we're gonna understand like how white supremacists operate much more like and how they think, because it's like you're asking the right questions, like and if you want to like just play the logic game, yes, the white supremacists are smarter than us, because no one has created such a system ever that has been so successful to this day. So it is fair to say yes, they are smarter and they are maintaining and refining the system in a way that it needs, in a way that is like running smooth. So very like I love that you said that. My biggest takeaway is it's opening, it's the whole parasitic relationship between like white people and black people. To this day it still manifests, and I love that it's like this book is allowing me to contextualize this behavior, because I don't believe that any behavior can change without the direct awareness and attitude to want that change. So I don't believe this behavior has changed in many areas of the world and areas of our daily activity. So, and the whole Christianity thing, I love that it's exposing me to like more reasons to be hesitant to like follow like that doctrine. We have 1 minute, so we're gonna stop. Ebony. But I say we could do another call again for Ebony to get her final thoughts.
Okay, well, I can try to get it out too.
You can't hear you, Ash.
I'm saying don't rush yourself. Like if you go over it or whatever. We'll just set up another call. It's not a big deal.
Okay. But what stuck with me was the last 4 lines of the introduction, where his friend, he's discussing how Vincent wouldn't want the text to go down so easily, and he was right. And so I'm really happy that this group exists, and I'm hoping we can continue to parse out the intricacies of the text together. It's really helpful, because after reading something like this, it's like, okay, now what? Okay. And I'm like Equiano right now. I'm understanding my usefulness, social proximity to whiteness, but after self-empowerment, what kind of systems exist so that, you know, something else can happen in the course of history? That's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. I love the group. I love Counting White Supremacists Book Club. We are on something here. We are doing something here.